Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Subspace integration sync. Today, we're going to talk about the updates to the integrations we're doing with .sama and the relayer and the parachains that we're archiving and validating, and a few other things. Ved, you or your twin, if you would like to start off with any updates there, please. We can't hear you, Ved.
Cannot hear you.
Okay, Ved, while you sort out your audio, Skylar, if you want to give us an update on how things are going with the parachain onboarding.
Yeah, sure. So we still have a few parachains that we need to get access to their feed for, but from the auction side, we had one more parachain win on the Kusama side. So the new one is Listen.io. They won the 35th parachain and raised about $2 million USD, which is double the last auction's price. I wanted to go into more detail because this one is actually one of the first interesting parachains that I've seen in a long time. So Listen is it's a social network that's focused on voice chat, kind of like Clubhouse was. They have an app in the Apple App Store. They have an app in the Google Play Store. But theirs is a little different because, of course, it's on the blockchain. So instead of just starting a room for free, some moderator will put down a deposit to start a chat room. And then this will go into a pot that eventually gets split. And then speakers, if you want to come and speak in the room, you put down a deposit as well, and you can purchase some time slot to chat. So then all this money goes into a pool. And once the group gets disbanded, everybody can share the funds that were in the pool. So it's kind of interesting. I just thought that was worth sharing, but also because they have a big focus on how they manage their data. They're very big on decentralized data, anti-censorship, personal privacy protection. Those are their big focuses, and they really are putting a big emphasis on decentralizing the data. But right now, their only solution is IPFS. So I think it might be a good opportunity for us, as a really early project for them to help maybe provide another layer of decentralization for the data. But yeah, I thought that one was really interesting. It's rare to find like really fresh new ideas, and especially in Kusama, they have a lot of interesting things going on. So they just won a slot a few days ago. There's another auction going on in Kusama now. So there'll be another one next week. For Polkadot, no new parachains. They just started an auction yesterday. So just one new one to add on to the list of parachains to add to the relayer. Otherwise, that's about it. Everything else is pretty calm.
Status.
You're muted.
Sorry.
I'm muted.
I didn't hear the first part.
You were muted.
You're good now.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay, I had unmuted. Strange. Yeah, sorry. Are we still maintaining that board that has the progress of all the different parachains? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you just want to pull that up really quick, and we can talk through that as Serge gives his update?
Yes.
Just to make sure we're in sync there.
Let me get to it. Okay. All right, it's a little slow today. I'm running off a hotspot. Okay. Just had Listen here. So we have 3 of the new Kusama parachains, and then 3 of the Polkadot parachains. And then these ones, the top Kilt, Bifrost, and Shidden, just need to be transferred to their new slot. So I don't know if we have any more updates on the status of those feeds, but it looks like it's still the same.
Okay, Serge, any updates on your end?
Yeah, I have submitted a PR to add Mangata on UI, on Relayer UI. And previously, I have already added it to archives. And yeah, I keep my eyes open on the rest, but they're not ready. Unique has public endpoint, but they're not yet producing blocks. So yeah.
So even though all these chains have won a slot, none of them are actually integrated as parachains actually, like yet.
Some
into the
are
relay chain.
producing blocks. I think Pichu or Dora, they're producing blocks, but they don't have public endpoint.
I see. Okay, so they're not integrated with unfinality, so we can't actually fetch the data yet. Is the problem with all of these?
Right.
I see. Okay. Okay. Any other updates, Serge, on regarding this?
Yeah, there was an issue with unfinality endpoints, and this was resolved. So currently we are using our dedicated endpoints with our API key for archives.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Skylar. Thanks, Serge. Oh, we lost Skylar. All right. Vet, is your audio working now?
Yeah, I think it should, but my Mac is still not working, so I'm on my phone. So hopefully I'll fix it later. Okay. My update would be that I started supporting Serge regarding the block decoding errors that he was facing, as well as RelayNet not producing blocks. So the first one, RelayNet not producing blocks. It's actually not producing block. It's just that it is not connected. The public node is not connected to the bootstrap for some reason, or it's not syncing from it. So it was never up to the tip. The bootstrap was. So I restarted it. I'm not sure why it worked after I restarted it. It's most likely that we might have restarted bootstrap node and farmer, and we forgot to restart public node, and the public node had the old bootstrap node address for some reason in the Docker. I feel like it, and that's why it didn't get connected. So when I restarted it,
what's the difference between a public node and an RPC node?
okay, okay, so the way when I looked at the project right now, the way that we kept it, there is a bootstrap node that is actually connected to the farmer that is actually producing blocks, and there is a public node that is connected to farmer and is acting as a public endpoint for the Polkadot.js UI. So this is essentially just syncing from the bootstrap node. Ideally, the bootstrap node is both an actual full node as well as bootstrap, I guess. I haven't had a chance to look at the full details of that setup yet, the relay network.
It's separated because we had to allow unsafe methods, I believe, for one of the reasons, and we didn't want to expose that.
Yeah, farmer needed that. I think farmer needs it, and we cannot reuse the same node for the external UI as well. So I think that's why we separated out.
But I believe we can actually remove that at this point. Yeah, okay, we need to allow any origin, otherwise it doesn't connect. That's the problem in the substrate. So unless we have some kind of proxy which can override like the request source, we cannot connect from the farmer. So that's why we have two nodes.
So the public node is actually a block producer, or is it just a full node?
Just a full node.
Just a full
node. Archival.
Okay. And that, I guess I'm still lost as to why we have.
Okay, we have two nodes. We have bootstrap node to which farmer is connected and producing blocks. And we have another node, which is just RPC node, which is connected to the bootstrap node.
Okay. And how does that integrate with the actual relayer node?
Relayer node is the bootstrap node. That's where the blocks are produced.
Okay. So what is the public node? what functionality does the public node provide?
It's an RPC endpoint.
That's just for the relayer UI.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do
For
with the
layer,
actual
for
relaying
Explorer.
process.
And
Exactly.
for relayer as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
So since Surge was looking at that and it was not syncing, so it was an assumption that it's not producing.
So
any
that's
more.
actually when you say public node, you mean the RPC node.
Yeah, the RPC.
And okay, and
Maybe-
so okay, just for terminology's sake, that would be good to not to stop
Okay, so
using the
I'm
term
gonna-
public
okay.
node.
Public RPC node and the validator node. So Surge was looking at the RPC node.
Validator
And-
node is bad terminology.
We don't
too.
have
I know.
validator.
It's
There's no
like, okay.
validators in Subspace.
I know. Shit. Okay, cool.
It's okay. No, that it's just
Okay,
it's
we
good
have
to
a-
sort
okay,
this out
cool.
now
Let's go
and make
with
sure
farmer
we're
node and
speaking the same
RPC node. I
language.
think that's the best I can do right now. So farmer node is actually the ones that are producing blocks, and then the RPC node is connected to farmer node and syncing with it whenever a new blocks are produced, right? So this one seems to have gotten different IP, or whenever the farmer node was restarted, we forgot to restart the public node, the RPC node as well. So it had the old DNS record according to the Docker. So it ended up not able to sync with it. So when I restarted it, it has got the new DNS record, so it was able to sync. That is my early assumption. I haven't been able to reproduce the same issue again. So I want to wait and see if that happens again in that scenario. Right now, it is syncing. The second issue that I've noticed is the sync is super slow. I think it's around 6 blocks per second. I'm not sure, Nazar, if that is something that we should look at or if we already know.
It depends on what the speed of the DigitalOcean storage is.
Okay.
Maybe it's just slow because of that. It's certainly kind of low, but at the same time, if you have full blocks, that's like megabytes and megabytes per second. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes sense because all those blocks mostly contain all the other blocks from Polkadot and relation.
Yeah,
Maybe
they should be almost full.
Yeah. Then I think that
But are those syncing from the archives or are those syncing from the RPC of the other networks? Because I thought that the archives weren't working and that we had made it so that you would restart it. No, it's not doing that.
It's different syncing. It's a public node, public RPC node is syncing from Bootstrap node. This is not the relayer archives.
This is syncing from the farmer node. The RPC node is syncing from the farmer node because it hasn't had a chance to sync up to it because it lost the connection in between. When I
So
restarted,
is the farmer node producing blocks at
it is
6
producing
blocks per second? Right, but is that at 6 blocks per second or is the RPC node syncing at 6 blocks per second from the farmer node?
RPC node is syncing at 6 blocks per second from the farmer node because RPC node lost connection while farmer kept on producing blocks irrespective. So it will take some time to sync all those full blocks into the RPC node from the farmer.
Are those on the same machine?
Yes.
Okay.
So
And that's expected to be that slow, Nazar?
No.
Okay. So
yeah, that's something that we would have to look into, but that's something that I've noticed today. So
okay. So do we want to talk about that some more, or is that acceptable?
Well, there is nothing to talk about. We need to research it.
Okay.
To figure out
All right.
what's happening.
That, are you capable of researching that yourself? Or do you need assistance with that?
mostly no, but I want to chat with Nazar post this, maybe just to get an idea where I can look at, where I can at least start at so that I can jump into it by myself. But yeah, a little bit of pointers would be great though.
Okay.
Can you create an issue for that, Ved?
Yeah, so apart from that, I think most likely I'll jump into looking into why the block syncing was slow. That is on the Substrate side. But yeah, so that's mostly it on my end though. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Do we have any visibility into what the actual archiving, like block production rate is on the Bootstrap node as it's syncing the archives?
No, not that I've noticed so far. I haven't had a chance to look at it, except for the fact that I just wanted to confirm if it's producing blocks. But from what I see from the looks at the logs, it is fast in the sense that I think we do not have the solution range adjustment enabled in it. So I think it is pushing a lot of blocks, but I can confirm and let you know if that was there, Nazar, was there any specific expected block we were aiming at with the relay one or Ares testnet?
No, we just wanted to make sure everything is synced, and then we disable that feature.
Okay.
But
okay, so it should be then 1 block per 6 seconds right now, right? But I'm pretty sure it's more than that.
if we have not enabled solution range adjustment, it's 1 block per second, and it's
Okay,
pushing
okay.
that for weeks, I
Okay.
guess.
Okay, so that means that we haven't enabled it, because I can guarantee that it is more than 1 block for 6 seconds.
Then we probably have millions of blocks to sync at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
When did that process start? When did we initiate that node?
Actually, I restarted
1
it
week
today.
ago. Oh,
I restarted it today in the morning.
Restart it or wiped everything and reset it?
I wiped that particular public node and restarted it.
Just the public node.
Just the public node.
Okay.
yeah, but testnet was started a week ago.
Yeah, I guess that's when I meant this. I didn't mean the sync process, but I meant the archiving process on the Bootstrap node. Like,
Okay.
I guess before, were we just looking at what the RPC node said to get a gauge of this, or was there anything we were like SSHing into the server or DigitalOcean to see what the status was on that Bootstrap node?
Today I
Because that was a
SSH
question more for Nazar and Serge.
Okay.
Like how we were monitoring the progress of this before. Was it just assumed through the Relayer UI?
Relay UI, Polkadot apps, and Datadog mostly.
Okay. Are you aware of how to check the status of that? The Bootstrap node by itself, Ben?
I've already SSH into it this morning, and I was able to look at the logs for all of them actually. So I didn't look at Datadog, but I already have all the details in SSH, so I didn't look into that.
Okay. So you're just aware that it's producing blocks at the rate, but you're not sure exactly like what, for example, it's like 10% of the archives have been produced, or 80% or something like that. Like some
Well,
estimate
the
as to, like,
node doesn't have any notion of archives, doesn't have any notion of relay, it just have feeds.
Oh yeah, I didn't
relevant.
look at the relayers in specific. I just looked at the farmer node to see if it's actually producing blocks and connected to the farmer. That's it.
So
Like,
Relayer UI is actually the best thing to look into that, because you know what the height of the Polkadot is right now, and you can like compare it with the height in the Explorer. So, well, like in our Relayer UI, and you can basically know how far it is. And usually those bigger networks like Polkadot and Kusama are downloaded uploaded for the longest time. So by the time they are uploaded, everything else should pretty much be ready.
okay, but since the RPC node is not syncing or syncing very slowly, we can't really use that as an
Yeah, it
accurate
shows
gauge right
out of
now.
date information.
Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is we don't really have visibility on what's happening on the RPC node right now, and it's
We can look at Relayer. I believe it prints how many blocks were uploaded. If it's like very low numbers, it means that it's just doing that in real time, so it should be ready. If it prints sometimes that it like uploaded a batch of 300 transactions, that probably means it's still syncing.
okay, but we don't
I
like have an idea of
currently-
the progress, just what the rate is at that moment in time. Go ahead, Serge.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I stopped both relayers today because to wait for the public RPC node to sync fully with the Bootstrap node, because otherwise it doesn't accept any blocks now. There were some errors that blocks decoding fails, and I decided to wait until it's fully synced.
I have an impression that almost nothing works there. It seems like syncing doesn't. The syncing is problematic. connection broke, relayer doesn't work. Like it's almost like we need to go back into it and do really good check of what's even happening.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like almost the whole like UI and RPC node is just kind of a distraction at this point. Like maybe we're not even really sure what's even happening on the Bootstrap node, or like if the block production validation decoding is all working properly. Serge, you had said like at the dev sync that there were issues where it wasn't decoding the information correctly in order to do the
Right.
validation for the justifications.
Yeah, there was a problem with blocks from archives, and I was debugging, investigating this after Monday. So I created a local archive because we made some updates on the relayer, how we convert raw blocks we get from the RPC and how we convert them to binaries, which we put in the archives. So apparently the old blocks used previous version of this conversion, and now there is a problem with decoding those old blocks because I created like a local archive with like from Genesis, and those blocks are accepted. They are decoded by Subspace runtime at the moment. So yeah, we need to create new archives, I'm afraid.
Okay, so let's do that. If it doesn't work, there's no point in keeping the old ones.
Yeah, we just
A quick question, Serge. Like you also mentioned that we were using a custom encoding. Could we also use the Polkadot API? Have you tried that yesterday? Because they already maintain a lot of these backward compatibilities, no?
The challenge there was performance. It was really, really, really expensive to decode so many blocks. It took forever, and it took 100% of CPU core in Node.js. So what I did, I just observed that we just have almost everything that's encoded. Like every transaction is not decoded. It's just like vector of bytes. So we can just concatenate things and do it very quickly instead of just going through additional conversions in the library level. So you can save quite a lot of CPU and make it like multiple times faster. So that was the primary reason for that.
and I double checked, like they both produce, like Polkadot.js and our like custom function, they both produce same results. So that is not a problem.
Yeah, I was actually like profiling the library. I made a few pull requests into the Polkadot.js API to make it faster in different places, but it still wasn't quite up to the level to like download hundreds of blocks per second. So
Okay. Fair.
Okay. So question on that. So I thought that we had the feeds validation set up such that we didn't need the justification proofs until some point at some like checkpoint that we start validating from versus doing it from Genesis. And if that checkpoint is after the archives start, or after the archives end, I mean, then shouldn't it still be able to read the old blocks if it's not getting the justifications from them? Or is it still trying to get the justifications even if it's not doing the validation?
Okay, so from what I understand so far, maybe I might be missing some context there, Jeremiah. So what actually failed to decode was we got some blocks from all finality, and then we had our own archive where we are storing all those Polkadot relay blocks, and we were using that archive to push those blocks so that we don't have to directly talk to on
Right.
finality, right?
Right.
Seems like those blocks that we have archived before seems to be decoding, like, or fail to be decoding whenever we are pushing them onto the runtime right now. Because of some changes, I'm not sure, maybe Serge could fill in there what was actual difference, why the decoding is not happening. And when Serge created another archive, fresh archive, and then pushed
Right.
blocks there, and then pushed blocks from that archive to runtime, it seems to be working.
I got that part. I guess what did we change in the decoding that invalidated our old archives? That's I thought it was to do with justifications, but maybe that was incorrect.
So, so one thing on top of it I can look at is like, since the block itself is not being decoded, so any particular change could have triggered it. So I think it would be better like to see what actually was stored in the initial stages, like the first blocks that we are not able to decode, and then like check what has changed from that and now.
Does it matter really at this point?
I
Like,
mean,
if we know it doesn't work, we know we can create it from scratch and it will work. Like, do we need to waste time on this?
Well, I just feel like it would be useful to know like why it didn't work, as opposed to just like pushing the reset button, just so we understand what's actually happening here.
Well, then we need to read the changes in the relayer, like what we
Because
did
I mean,
change and the way
if
we
we
store it.
don't, sure, but I guess it just feels like if this happened once, then like it could happen again, and it's like a monumental effort to rebuild all these archives. So I'm just trying to understand like the root cause, I guess, of like why we're having to rebuild them, so we can try to mitigate it from happening in the future.
Yeah, I think the problem was the part with justification, because previously we didn't decode blocks in the runtime at all. So we just submitted binaries and they were stored, and we didn't retrieve or do anything with them. So and now we decode them, so we identified there is a problem. And previously we most of the blocks, they don't have justifications, as we know. So we assumed that this justification field in the JSON has like null or something else. We didn't know what exactly should be the value. And at some point we discovered that the way we converted this property was wrong. And we updated it in the code of relayer, but we still had those archives. So we didn't update our archives in time.
Okay, the archives are binary, right?
Right.
Okay. And but we have to do some special transformation from JSON to binary when we build the archives.
Yes.
And okay, and so we have to rewrite that transformation, or I guess you've already done that and tested it locally, so that it now is decodable by the runtime.
Yes. And also, like currently, if we restart archives, we need to store blocks with finality proofs, right? And if we fetch finality proofs from Genesis, like public parity node or on finality node, they won't have this API. So early blocks are not covered, as we discussed previously. So we need to start a new Polkadot node, resync it, and then we will have this API proof, finality proof API working.
I think as long as we have a certain point in time after which we always have finality proofs, we can just set that as a checkpoint like we did before. We can sync the old blocks the reverse way without additional checks because we have the root or like the hash of the block. So that's fine. And everything going forward can be verified. And we can even move that point forward quite a bit because it's all hash linked.
Yeah,
so I
okay.
don't see that a big problem. I don't think we need to put a lot of resources to actually establish those archival nodes for everything.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
so go ahead, Serge.
Then we just need to implement this like syncing in two directions, right? From checkpoint. Because we
what
don't
do you mean
have
by
it.
syncing?
Like we have a checkpoint where we start the validation. And
Right, so that's
from
already
this,
implemented on the runtime.
right, but not on the relayer.
but not on the
Okay,
relay. We
right.
haven't worked on that yet.
Yeah, so that's something that we need to implement anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so to summarize, if I understand correctly, we have to rebuild all the archives for both relay chains and all 42 parachains in such a way, no, just for the relay chains? You made a look there, Serge, like I said something wrong.
Yeah, probably all parachains as well.
Okay, so we have to rebuild all the archives for everything in such a way that's it's encoded in binary such that The runtime can decode it properly. We're not going to include justification proofs in the archives. However, the relayer, after we enable the validation checkpoint, will then fetch those justification proofs in real time from the network. Is that right? As they're needed?
Okay, so right now, how the runtime expects you to do that is you put a checkpoint and then you start pushing blocks in the forward direction with the justifications and in the backward direction without any justifications. So whichever block that we pick.
I mean,
anything-
it could have justifications if you're going in the reverse order.
Yeah.
Just doesn't
which
really
just,
matter.
yeah, but we just don't check them irrespective because the validation point is somewhere else.
Right.
Okay. And is it possible that we can not include the justifications in the reverse order, or will it break if it does it like expect them and need them?
We can skip them to save space, I guess. It will be less data.
The only question that happens with not including that is how do someone else can verify those blocks from our DSM? Because they would need to do exactly like how we started the feed for them to actually be sure that it has been validated using the checkpoint. They cannot do that from block 0 because they wouldn't have any of the justifications to prove that block 1, 2, 3, or whatever is actually valid. That's that would be one scenario where we would need them though.
So I think that's outside the scope of what we're trying to actually achieve, to be fair.
Okay.
So my concern is that there's going to be the way that we've built the archive so far is not designed to fetch and archive these justification proofs, and that's going to add another layer of complexity, which might be unnecessary. That's going to be non-trivial to do that. It's not so much about saving space or just not trying to validate the data. Well, okay. So where do we fetch these justification proofs from? Like from the archives? Like when we sync the chains and write the archives? Because it doesn't do that currently, right? And I know there's been issues around like where do we actually find these justification proofs? It's like it wasn't
the same API that we fetch the blocks themselves. Just another request. Same node, same API, just a different method. We need to call additionally.
Okay, so we have to write in a new method and like a new storage like property.
No, it's not a new storage. It's the same storage, the same everything. Just we need to make additional query and encode it together with the block itself.
Yeah, we just add it to the actual block we get.
Okay.
So when we receive the block, the data structure is actually that we receive is actually a signed block data structure. It has a block field and it has a justification field. Justification field is just null or like none in Rust. What we need to do another request and get that field and put it in there before encoding into binary. That's it. And we can do that request to the same RPC node that we've just got the block itself from. So like as long as that is done, it's like from the archive point of view, it's the same. It's just the difference whether that field is none or some. By default is none, but we can make it some, and then it's all verifiable.
Okay. So the other concern here is that Serge just doesn't have any availability to work on this right now because of the desktop app. And so something that we were discussing is how much of this that you can take over, Ved, and if you can take more responsibility for this project at this point. One thing that's not clear to me is on the actual like relayer node, like the Node.js side of this. I'm not. Do you have any understanding of how that works, Ved, or do you have any experience in JavaScript or TypeScript or Node.js to work on that? And be honest if you're like, that's outside my wheelhouse.
That is completely outside my wheelhouse.
Okay. So bottom line, realistically, it's going to be several weeks before we can have time to even fix this such that we can build the archives in the correct way, or modify the relayer unless we just skip
Well,
this
we have several
justification for
parts
now.
of the work here. One is to restart archive creation with the justifications in archives. So like correct encoding, justifications included, just start it, let the process run for however many weeks it will take. So that's like distinct part. And then a separate part from that is to actually make it sync in the new way, which
But
is
who's
kind of
gonna actually-
independent.
But who's actually going to modify the relayer so that it can fetch the justifications?
It doesn't need to be modified to fetch justifications. It's already doing it.
No, yeah, we already fetched justification.
When we're building the archives?
Building archives is not relayer. It's building archives. It's a separate, distinct script.
Okay. Does building the
So that-
archives fetch the justifications right now? Okay. So
No.
who's going to be responsible for?
It does. It does.
Oh,
No, it does. When we build archives, when we fetch new blocks, like originally we didn't, but
okay. So
like
that's already
maybe
done. You just need to restart.
few weeks ago, yeah, we fetch block from the RPC, and we fetch finality proof. We extract justification. We add it to the block, and then we convert it to binary and save to the archive.
So we just need to restart archives and it will start creating the correct ones.
We just need to implement this check for the block number, because for early blocks, this API will not work.
Okay, so
finality proof.
can we just make, if it fails, we'll store none in that field instead of some?
Yeah.
Should be relatively easy.
And
And
Yeah.
which component of the project is this in?
it's a downloader script.
Yeah, we have
This is in the
archive.
archiving script. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that's a bash script?
No,
JavaScript.
JavaScript.
JavaScript script. Okay. Okay.
I can take a look
Nizar?
at it. I can take a
Okay.
look at it.
So just assume that any work we talk about, Serge is not going to be able to do. We're trying to take all that off of his shoulders. Like if there's any work Serge is going to do, it's about showing somebody how something works, or like being a resource to explain how something works. But any new implementation work, new coding, we're trying to take off of his plate right now.
I guess just push everything on me.
No, I
Okay.
think I can take up that one just to check. Maybe I'll talk with Serge post this, and then I'll get some details from him.
Okay.
This
So
particular script is easy. I can do it, like it won't take a lot of time. But implementing this, like syncing, this is the challenge.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, Serge. Like, let's talk about that post this. I'll see if I can actually figure it out and do it. Like I think it should be straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, about
Yeah,
the
and I
reverse
think-
sync, I can talk with you about that. It's also not difficult, just a little bit of boilerplate you need to write.
Okay.
yeah, and Serge, I think it would be, I understand that it would be trivial for you to extend the script, but I think it would be more valuable if you just showed Ved how to extend the script so you can actually understand how it works, so that when it breaks or if we need to change it again, we don't have to come back to you, but Ved can understand how to do that.
Okay.
All right, so Ved, just for some background, so when we first did this process many months ago, Nizar like locally synced all of these networks on his machine, and it took like weeks to do this.
It was very fun.
And then he like transitioned all of these to these DigitalOcean archives, and then later we built this script to like periodically resync these archives. But my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, Nizar, my impression is that if we try to build these archives from Genesis on DigitalOcean, it's going to take a very, very long time to do. It's going to be much slower than it was the first time.
So the problem there is there are public API endpoints, like completely free, and they are rate limited. Or you can use on finality like permissioned API with a token that has higher limits, but still it's not very fast. So at best you can do something like 6 blocks, maybe 10 blocks per second. In practice, for many chains, it's like 0.4, 0.6 blocks per second. So if you have 10 million blocks, you can imagine how long it takes. So what I did, I was running like 13 chains on my machine, using basically all of the CPU for many days to actually sync them from Genesis and have all of those chains on my machine. And for parachains, it means that I was syncing like Polkadot 5 times and Kusama 10 times or something like that, plus parachains. And when that was done, my local machine was actually much faster in terms of RPC requests. So I was able to do like hundreds blocks per second in some cases. But it took a long time to actually sync those chains. So once we had those archives, we were just able to extend them to only append new blocks. We didn't have to go through that process from scratch. That's why we had this process in the background running on a separate instance that was just filling those archives with new blocks produced, which was fine because those blocks are produced like once every 6 seconds for relay chains and like 12 seconds or even more for parachains. So that was okay. But if you just naively started, it will take months, most likely, unless we have our dedicated node.
Okay, question. Is there not a way, since we've already built these archives, is there not a way that we can just write a script which reads the archive locally and translates it into the correct data format, and just do none for the justifications, as opposed to having to resync all this from the networks themselves?
We should be able to. Just there is a challenge because the old blocks were created one way. After some point, from what I understand, script was updated. So they are created in a different way. We don't remember what point that was. So that might be fun to investigate.
Well, that's just like an if-else statement, right? Like check the format. If this, translate this way, else translate that way.
Well, that's assuming that you have that format filled. If you don't,
Well, there's two potential data structures, or are there more than two? Or like encoding formats?
It should be just two, I think. Unless we modified it multiple times, which I'm not sure what's happening. Probably not.
Yeah, I think we only once modified.
I mean, for most of these chains, like it's kind of not difficult to set up the archival nodes. Many of them have like Docker images that we can just run with Docker Compose. They work about the same way. The problem is primarily CPU, and after that, disk and bandwidth that you need to actually like validate everything. So that's the primary challenge. Like it was using basically all the cores I have on my machine with all those parachains, and it required a lot of space and ideally SSD, because on the hard drive, if you have like 5 parachains running concurrently, it's not a great experience. It's not fast. So if we buy something like 60-core machine somewhere in the cloud and I don't know 4 terabytes of NVMe storage on board, we should be able to set up most of those at least parachains and just run archival nodes and have everything at our disposal. But just depends how much effort we want to put into it.
But I think only like maybe 20 parachains have Docker images available. Because since you did that, there were a lot of like new parachains and they don't even have on finality endpoint.
Hopefully they don't have as many blocks produced yet, so we can sync them from public endpoints in some kind of bounded amount of time, so to speak.
What are your thoughts on all this, Ved?
I'm still taking in. I'm not sure. I kind of like the approach of actually looking through our archival and then translating them. I was about to say that as well, but I don't know. I from the way we are talking about the amount of data there, I'm not sure which, but we would need to put effort somewhere. So I think it's just which one's the easier route at this moment.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an option to just freeze whatever we have on this project until we have someone dedicated who can actually like work on this and plan the next steps and like control the process and everything. It feels like whoever we assign to this will be working part-time on it anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's more than just an engineering decision, because we've been supporting this project and this community for quite a while now. So if we shut it down, there'd be repercussions for that. Okay. All right. Well, let's think about that a little bit more. I feel like if we are we can spend a lot of effort on this and really not get a lot of output here. And we might just need to rethink our process from scratch on the correct way to do this. Okay, so in the meantime, we have the old version of the relayer, which has no validation, which is just feed storage, which is still working and still pushing new blocks, right? Okay. And that is still compatible with the new version of the monorepo, or did we break compatibility there? Because we have this expectation of like a certain data structure for feeds validation. Like, or I guess I'm asking, are we running that on like an old version of an old snapshot of Subspace?
You mean test A, the currently public facing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an older version. It doesn't have feed validation and a lot of stuff.
So if we were to say, like, try to merge that version of testnet with FarmNet, would that be incompatible because it wouldn't be able to read the archival data structure anymore? Does my question not make any sense?
I was distracted if it was for me, sorry.
I guess I'm asking, have we gotten out of sync with their version of the core protocol? If that
Oh
would
yeah,
still
it's really
work,
out of date. It's like
Yeah.
at least a few weeks old.
Yeah.
But I don't
So
think it's a
FarmNet-
big problem. We have the runtime upgrade there, so the logic for validation is up to date, and the network itself is compatible, so it's not a big deal.
Like, so we could do a forkless runtime upgrade on test A and it would still work.
We should be able to.
So it would just
That's
archive,
what
but
we
not
actually
try to
did on
validate.
the FarmNet. That's the same network as on the FarmNet, I believe. So even those who have started with like March 9th or something snapshot, they are still running the latest runtime and without issues.
But we didn't.
So
But
it
we don't
should be
actually have any
possible.
feeds that are being built on FarmNet.
Right. I think we'll just break the old feeds, but we can create new ones. I'm not sure we can upgrade feeds. We didn't.
That's what I
create
was
any
asking. Yeah.
migrations.
So it does break feeds if we were to update
Yep.
testnet to the latest. Okay.
Mhm.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay. So basically, we can maintain the archiving just on an old snapshot of Subspace until we migrate to a new like workflow for this archiving and validation.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's I guess let's just pause for a little bit and think about the right approach to do this versus just charging ahead with something. Okay. Any other updates regarding anything to do with integrations that we need to cover? Any other topics?
Serge wanted to talk about UI.
Yeah, Relay UI.
Yeah, if it's relevant. So currently we have more than 40 chains on UI. And if you remember, we have like Polkadot and Kusama on top, and everything else jumps. So if you are looking for a particular chain, you need to scroll, and then you find it, and then it jumps every block.
You mean
So
the
it's
sorting
not.
changes?
Yeah,
after
yeah,
each
yeah,
block?
yeah. Every new
Okay.
block we sort them, and it's just it's too large, too long list of chains, and we have this like sorting by like Polkadot or Kusama, but still they jump all the time. So I think we need to think about like next iteration of UI.
Okay. Is that feedback that we've gotten from users, or is that just something you noticed yourself?
No, just feedback from me.
Okay. Okay. Has anybody else noticed that, or has that been a concern? I actually wasn't aware that that was how it was working. Okay. So Serge, if you can just create an issue just to track this and describe what you think is the right approach, but I think it's probably not critical to implement that at this stage. But I think it's a good idea, and I do think we need to update the UI. I have a lot of ideas actually on what I want to do to update the UI, but I'd rather try to do it in a more structured way. But it's definitely good feedback and something that we should track, and when we get to that stage, we can put that into the next iteration plan. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we look forward to more updates, giving you guys some more updates next week.